In this podcast episode, the host speaks with Dr. Andrew Koutnik, a leading research scientist deeply immersed in metabolic health, diabetes, and ketogenic dietary strategies. Dr. Koutnik, who lives with type 1 diabetes and has personally reversed obesity through diet and lifestyle, shares his profound insights gained from over 15 years of research and lived experience. Their discussion touches on the alarming rise of chronic diseases, the critical role of glucose and insulin regulation, the power of the ketogenic diet, and even explores emerging frontiers like exogenous ketones and their therapeutic potential. Dr. Koutnik opens by highlighting the stark reality facing modern society. Over 80% of adults are on a trajectory toward chronic metabolic diseases, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, and related cardiovascular conditions. He underscores a fundamental disconnect in the current healthcare paradigm, the failure to adequately educate and empower patients with nutritional knowledge that can prevent or even reverse many chronic illnesses. Despite advances in medical technology and pharmaceuticals, conventional advice often overlooks the most potent long-term factors that govern health outcomes, namely diet and metabolism. He shares a personal story of childhood obesity that eventually led to a diagnosis of an irreversible chronic disease. This journey sparked his passion to explore metabolic science and to discover actionable strategies beyond typical medical guidance. This perspective gives his work an important real-world foundation. Central to Dr. Koutnik's research is metabolism, specifically how the body processes nutrients like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, and the complex interplay with hormones such as insulin. Using simple analogies, he explains insulin as the thermostat regulating blood glucose, essential to keeping tightly controlled sugar levels in a narrow range necessary for survival. He details how obesity precipitates early insulin resistance, which undermines glucose control well before symptoms become evident. Dr. Koutnik brings particular expertise to type 1 diabetes, shedding light on how its hallmark insulin deficiency requires management via insulin pumps and continuous glucose monitors the size of wearable devices. By tracking blood glucose and insulin dynamically, both in clinical studies and in his own life, he reveals the volatile swings that many experience and the cognitive and physical symptoms tied to these fluctuations. Fatigue, irritability, brain fog, and impaired cognitive function are common effects when glucose is unstable, highlighting the need for metabolic stability. The conversation emphasizes that glycemic control, measured by A1C levels, average blood sugar over 2 to 3 months, is arguably the most powerful predictor of complications such as cardiovascular disease in diabetes. Dr. Koutnik points out that poor glucose management drives early structural changes in blood vessels even in children, signifying precursors to atherosclerosis, retinopathy, and neurological differences linked directly to elevated blood sugar variability. A significant portion of the discussion revolves around the ketogenic diet, a low-carbohydrate, moderate-protein, high-fat nutritional approach. Contrary to common misconceptions that keto is simply steak and bacon all day, Dr. Koutnik describes a well-formulated ketogenic diet as rich in green leafy vegetables, nuts, fish, and healthy fats such as olive and avocado oils. This diet works by dramatically reducing carbohydrate intake to minimize glucose spikes and insulin surges, enabling the body to switch its fuel source from glucose to fat-derived ketones. This metabolic flexibility resembles an evolutionary survival mechanism, allowing humans to endure periods without food by efficiently burning stored fat. Dr. Koutnik recounts a decade-long case study, the longest of its kind, documenting the impact of a ketogenic diet on a patient with type 1 diabetes. He reports that despite a near doubling of LDL cholesterol, typical concerns about cardiovascular risk were contradicted by the patient's excellent vascular health, improved glycemic control with substantial insulin dose reductions, and absence of disease progression. Beyond diabetes management, he cites emerging research showing the ketogenic diet's positive effects on obesity, Alzheimer's, mental health disorders, and beyond. He notes that carbohydrate restriction, or therapeutic carbohydrate restriction as he terms it, is increasingly recognized as among the best evidence-based nutritional interventions for type 2 diabetes and other metabolic diseases. Dr. Koutnik discusses not only endogenous ketone production via diet or fasting, but also exogenous ketones, supplemental ketone bodies consumed to rapidly elevate ketones in blood without requiring dietary carbohydrate restriction. These substances, such as those used in military and astronaut research funded by DARPA, have shown promise in enhancing physical performance, reducing inflammation, and promoting brain health. He explains fascinating studies revealing that ketones improve brain network stability dramatically more than glucose, correlating with better cognitive function and potentially slowing age-related cognitive decline. Additionally, there are ongoing trials investigating ketone therapies for serious mental illnesses, recognizing metabolic dysfunction as an underlying component. Regarding exercise, Dr. Koutnik challenges long-standing dogma that carbohydrates are indispensable for intense physical performance. In controlled, randomized studies, athletes adapted to ketogenic diets over 4 weeks maintained high-intensity sprint performance without deterioration, exhibiting record levels of fat oxidation even at maximal oxygen consumption. This adaptation has major implications for sports nutrition and metabolic health. He also tackles common questions about muscle gain on ketogenic diets, clarifying that muscle mass maintenance and growth are entirely feasible if adequate protein intake and resistance exercise are present. Initial rapid weight loss on keto often results from water weight reduction, particularly sodium depletion, rather than muscle loss. The discussion candidly explores modern food environments and labeling challenges. Dr. Koutnik draws attention to the deceptive marketing of keto-friendly or zero-sugar products that contain sugar alcohols or processed carbohydrates with metabolic effects akin to sugar, causing unexpected glucose spikes. He stresses that navigating today's grocery aisles demands considerable biochemical knowledge, as processed foods often combine fats, salts, and sugars to maximize palatability and stimulate overeating through dopamine-driven reward pathways. Additionally, drinks like fruit juices, smoothies, sodas, and other liquid calories are singled out as major culprits in blood sugar volatility and excess calorie intake, fueling the chronic disease epidemic. Even traditionally healthy foods such as white rice, white bread, potatoes, and dried fruits can provoke significant glycemic responses, particularly in metabolically impaired individuals. His advice extends to watching out for these hidden triggers and opting for whole, minimally processed foods rich in fiber to dampen glucose surges and improve metabolic health. Dr. Koutnik stresses foundational pillars for health: conscious nutrition tailored to individual metabolic status, consistent exercise, including resistance training and aerobic activity, and sufficient sleep. He emphasizes the importance of personalized approaches because individual responses to diets and interventions can vary widely. What works for one may not for another. He shares his own routine of training nearly daily with weightlifting and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, balanced with cardiovascular workouts, all within a ketogenic dietary framework that reduces his appetite but stabilizes his energy and insulin needs. Sleep and stress management remain critical components, reinforcing that there are no shortcuts. These basics must be addressed for meaningful health improvements. Toward the end of the podcast, the conversation briefly drifts into philosophical territory on consciousness and existence, unknowns that parallel the complexities of human health and disease. Dr. Koutnik humbly acknowledges the limits of current scientific understanding, advocating continued exploration both in the lab and through personal experimentation. His genuine journey from patient to researcher and advocate exemplifies the critical bridge between lived experience and scientific discovery. With decades of research ahead, his mission centers on empowering others through accessible science, uncovering the transformative power of nutrition and metabolism for preventing chronic disease on a population level.